adding value outside of just adding units, things you can do, AI being a big part of it, other items that seem to add value, and then how you translate that into additional dollars on the actual value of the building.
And so you're just having all these efficiencies, and a lot of the people that we're working with, no one's really adapting to it and jumping at it.
It doesn't take that much to stand out over other landlords, because like the majority mindset is scarcity. Let's face that. It is. Yes. And because it is, these landlords won't spend an extra dime. Welcome back to the REI Hot Seat. I've got David Hulshof sitting next to me. Hulshof?
Yeah, you got it right last time. No T.
Yeah, okay. I apologize. Anyways, I fellow Dutch descendant, and
which is timely for this conversation. Yes.
Anyways, we're going to be talking about how you can use technology and AI to add value to your building. So a very different value add. Everybody was always doing bathrooms, kitchens. But what if you could add tech and actually turn that into dollars in your pocket? Like there's all these little hacks to get more money. Like you do recoverables on buildings. Like you can't bill utilities necessarily because you can't track it. You do a flat amount. Well, now what if you could do a flat amount for tech?
That's right. Yeah, this came about because we have there's an off-market deal right now, and one of the things the seller did was really equip each unit with a decent amount of tech. It's not crazy, it's not nuts, but one of the things is, somebody buzzes in and it captures your face and it goes to a screen in the unit. And
so
the
amount, can see who it is.
Yeah, so you can see who it is. You can buzz it in, which is like, we know that technology exists, but it's not that expensive right now. And everyone that's seen the property, that's the thing they talk about.
Yeah.
And
it's different, right?
Yeah, it's different. It's unique. It makes it feel more high end. And you and I were chatting. There's some commentary out there that, on average, somewhere between $50 to $75 increase per month just by adding some general tech to the
50 to 75.
Yeah, per unit, per month. I mean, that's a pretty good number, right?
So let's say you did an extra $1,000 in a year because of that.
Right.
What's that work out to an additional value on the building at a 5 cap?
Right.
And is that $100,000?
Yeah. And you just oh boy.
No, that's $20,000. That's $20,000 extra value.
Yeah, and I mean it's just straight like you're not incurring much of a cost. There's a setup cost obviously to do it, but I guess the point we get to is it used to be expensive. It's not that expensive.
But if that cost say it adds the extra $1,000, if you want to do just a basic payback, if it costs you $5,000 to do, that's a 5-year payback. You could work the ROI on that. It's defensible. I think any longer than that, it starts to become non-defensible.
Right.
But if you could do it for say like $2,000, pays back in 2 years, that's 50% ROI.
Right. And that's just dollars, right? This brings a quality of tenant in. There's all these other new AI technologies coming out. So one, for example, syncs up with a lot of your appliances.
Yeah.
Your heat pumps that were all installed because of MLI Select. And what it does is it actually communicates with your app and starts to tell you that, hey, this broke down in unit 2. So you can get ahead of it. Right, this is acting a little wonky.
Yes, so you have a finger on the pulse with everything.
There's another one that it tracks usage, obviously per tenant, and so things like relative to, hey, when it gets too hot in this person's unit, they keep opening the window, so we can get predictive on this. Instead of that happening, it could just cool down faster for the individual tenant.
Now, is that a thing for most landlords with the heat pumps because they're not really paying utilities?
It depends on who. It depends, right? Yeah. Well, it depends where. Like some people, it's metered, not. But I guess the point is, wear and tear, obviously cost. Like it starts to add a lot of value, and these things, like people weren't looking at them because A, they didn't exist, or B, they were just simply too expensive. But to throw a couple screens around, it's not that expensive, and you're getting.
So you're just talking about the main screen inside the apartment, and that will wow people. Like, of course it will. If it doesn't take that much to stand out over other landlords, because like the majority mindset is scarcity. Let's face that. It is. Yes. And because it is, these landlords won't spend an extra dime. So I was always the guy going and throwing quartz into my student rentals and all that stuff, like going above and beyond.
Well, that shocks me that since you're Dutch, to be honest. I'm just shocked at hearing that. Like, I mean, it's I had to learn that. I didn't learn that from my family, but I learned that from like a very savvy investor, and he would command the top market rents. And then I went to business school, obviously, so we're looking, and we're all cap rates in this day and age as investors, and it's just like if you can pencil it. If it makes sense on paper. Yes.
And, for having, crappy little student rental where ants would crawl on top of me. So having having the nice one was something I wished I'd had, but I knew people would pay for that. I knew they would.
Yeah.
So it was just dollars and cents.
Yeah. It just brings, and again, to your point, the gap to separate is not that
it's not that much.
It's not that hard.
We're talking about a couple $1,000 maybe bucks to put this in. I don't know how much it costs because you have to wire it in with network Ethernet cables and all that.
Yeah. And listen, it's not free, but again, and it depends where in the process you are, right? Like people always ask, like, should I meter for hydro or even water? We had this discussion. It's like, well,
the
part of that, and part of that depends on where along the journey you are. This particular person was ripped down to the studs. It's a no-brainer, right? It's a must do. But
so if you're already studs, Ethernet cable is dirt cheap. So you can run those connections. The screens probably aren't that much. If you're retrofitting, they can still do it. I've seen these guys run these lines and they just make a hole here and there. Like they're very careful, and you'd be surprised at how minimal the damage is.
Yeah. And I mean, that's just one technology, and it came about because that's what everybody's talking about, right? It's like these screens. And, we heard, that $50, $75 premium for like marginal tech. And you think, is that the case? And now that's all everyone's talking about when they walk through these units. And you think, would that command $50, $75 more a month? For sure.
I think so, because it's all a supply and demand business. So if you've increased the demand for units that have the tech, and there's only so many of them,
right?
Then now they no longer have an alternative that can provide them with that. So they're gonna be willing. So say you have 2 or 3 that are interested. Maybe one group says, "Hey, we'd be willing to pay a bit more." Yeah. There you go. That's where that all starts. Hey, we'd be willing to pay a bit more. I know with my student rentals, I've had people bid way above ask to get into them.
Yeah, it's interesting to kind of push that top, and the gap to actually do it now is not that hard, right? The other part we see now is AI being utilized for property managers with conversations, but we're
bots.
Yeah, with bots and kind of filtering it out, and even helping with tenants relocate is helping them find another new place, right? And so you're just having all these efficiencies, and a lot of the people that we're working with, no one's really adapting to it and jumping at it.
Yeah, I think one of the first things I saw AI really being used for as real estate investors is I had somebody on my podcast who was he would throw all his deals into it. Like he'd have a deal analysis bot that he created on ChatGPT, right? Yeah. So you can do that.
It would do the analysis for him?
Yeah. Like basically pre-programmed it to do his analysis for it. But I mean, I don't know how that'll work with a visual because ChatGPT, it's very hit and miss with that.
Right.
But you can program it to think like you think in a way. Yeah. Like I find, in a way, I also find ChatGPT very disappointing because they clearly throttle back its capability.
Oh, yeah.
Like you ask it a hard question and it just checks out and gives you a horrible answer.
Yeah.
But it can be very useful in micro use. But I think so say you program in your model to analyze deals, it can work for that. You can put in parameters and say, hey, I have a deal like this, according to Andrew's framework, would this be a good deal? Stuff like that. So you can kind of get a base level of analysis done with it.
I spent an evening just messing about trying to get in the weeds, right, as one does, and living a crazy life on a Friday. And one of I forget the name of it now, but a pseudo ChatGPT, but what you do is you take a file and you upload it into it, and it understands it, reads it, and then you can ask the bot questions about it.
Yeah, the PDF, that's huge.
That was really cool.
So I do use this in, especially in our acquisitions in Florida. Like say we're trying to buy a condo. This is a recent example. It's in an HOA, so it's an HOA condo board. And we want to find out, it's a plus 55. That's what they say. Yeah. We want to find out, can we buy it anyway? So I'm uploading the PDF and asking it questions because I don't know all the areas it references. So based on this PDF, we're trying to do this. Could we execute this plan? And it'll start spitting out, well, you're going to want to make sure because this says you can't do that.
Truly remarkable, right?
Like, that's probably the single most useful thing I've found about it. Like being able to ask questions about contracts. I'll say, how does this contract protect me? And it'll say, of course, talk to your lawyer. So I usually just lead it and say, of course, I'm going to talk to my lawyer, but please draft me a perfect clause that I can have my lawyer review, stuff like that.
Smart. Yeah, to walk
and it'll give you a bunch of things like that. So if you're negotiating deals, I don't think it's like Rain Man. I don't think it is, the be all end all. And I think it needs a lot of discernment on what it gives you. You need to kind of analyze that and see, but it can definitely be a tool to save time.
I uploaded a dummy lease, but a commercial one that was pretty robust. It was like 60, 70 pages. And same thing, you start interacting with it. Questions. And, it's, what about this bio provision? What about this? And yada, yada. And it starts spitting things and it references back. And even if you just use it to point out where in the document for you to go,
Yeah, tell me where I can find this. Yeah. Where does it talk about this? Oh, the document doesn't talk about that. Okay, very good. I need to add that.
Right. Then you saved yourself 70 pages of reading. Right?
Yeah, I could just help you get to the answer faster, but definitely don't rely on it, because they most definitely, I've come to this conclusion, they have throttled it to save basically computer memory power. Right. Like if you ask it something it's gonna have to scour the internet and do all this stuff, like you're not going to get a good answer.
Right.
It'll give you a crap answer.
It's been interesting though, like from the multifamily perspective of, where we are right now and how to add value while working with tenants, right? So instead of kind of going the wrong direction, you start working with them and making your property, making your multifamily building more efficient with what you have. So that seems to be the big, and then we're hearing now people adding additional units back, things like that. Like that's kind of the big push.
But it's easier to do the tech than it is to do an additional unit.
And and to your point about like how to do the math on the cap rate, like, these small incremental wins add substantial value.
Yeah.
Like we were looking at an analysis recently, and nobody's, and this is in London, no charge for parking. There's storage lockers. They're not being utilized. There's 12 storage lockers, right? No charge on them. And you start doing the math. If you just took those storage lockers, started working through parking, maybe we charge 50 a unit or 50 a spot or whatever, 50 to 100 per storage bay. And then you add another 50 to 75 per unit with tech. Like you've lifted the building hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars.
And you literally didn't do anything other than the tech part. But so to make sure I'm following what you're saying, because I think I am, you're saying if you got a building that's just not charging for parking, you now start adding in a fee for that. If you're not charging, or if you're not adding in a bill back, like say you don't have sub-metered electricity or water or all that, now you still advertise the same price and you just say, hey, we have a flat fee for water, we have a flat fee for gas, flat fee for electric. They know they would pay plus utilities. You just advertise as plus utilities. Even though you haven't separately metered, now you have...
We have that on the 20 unit in near Bruce Power. They're doing a chargeback of $65 a unit for water.
Yeah.
Right. And again, it's not that challenging when you look at a building, how to get, hundreds of dollars per month in lift, but everybody just kind of singularly focused on one path. And when you zoom out,
we got to add units, but they're missing, whether the forest for the trees.
You just look at it and you go, man, if you just start to, to touch on parking, most of the time parking is not included in leases, right? They haven't been in the lease that's been written up. It's not included. So
it's not.
It's not
even if there's a parking spot there, you're not guaranteeing it. You just, hey, by the way, there's parking out there.
Right. And then, so, you start enforcing parking, which you're allowed to do, and you start to charge. So you get an immediate lift. Same with storage lockers, right? They're just wasted space. And people, when you're changing hands from old operators to new ones, a lot of times these old operators, they don't have a lot of debt on it. They're just making money. They're happy, right? And it's incumbent. If you're the new buyer, you got to add value. And it's not necessarily to fight and kick and scream at tenants. It's like, hey, we add thousands of dollars of lift per month by working with a system that works. Parking, storage, AI, good technology. I mean, it's why fight the other fight? Because, you don't need to in a lot of cases.
You don't. Like, you can obviously add units, but like you can go in right now and just optimize your existing unit, which is in today's day and age with the interest rates where they are, like this is top-notch important stuff. Because if you can go in and squeak an extra $1,000 a unit on, say, 10 units, so now you're $10,000 a year. If you're dividing that by 0.05, your cap rate at 5%. I mean, you could debate where the cap rate is, but for simple math, that's basically a 20x. So 10,000 times 20.
And
$200,000 of extra value.
This is what happens. We get lost in the minutia and don't zoom out. It's like if somebody presented you with that opportunity on an investment, you'd be hyped about it. But as I look through buildings and people that aren't, most people, including myself, now we're getting more efficient on our buildings and taking those small, I always say like we're going for singles and doubles instead of home runs. And it's like if you do that across your portfolio or on an acquisition, you're going to get a lot of opportunity, a lot of lift with not a lot of struggle. Right?
Yeah, imagine there are people with huge portfolios out there where if they just implemented this, they could add significant value, add significant cash flow. A lot of them don't care, to your point, because they've been in there forever. Their mortgage is, reasonably low. They cash flow well. They're like, what do I care?
Right.
But somebody else coming in, buying it, paying the market price for it, obviously they care.
Makes a big difference. And, when you're underwriting these deals, we can look at it and say, if you didn't do anything, it stabilizes what it looks like. But if you did those efficiencies, it'll add $200,000, $300,000 of value. Quick win.
The way I look at real estate investing, and as I did it as a student rental investor, was I was going to be the best. Like when everybody else was when normal market rent was $550 a bedroom, right. I was going to be the guy getting $700. And I did that. And I did that by doing things that were beyond people's expectations.
Right.
So you can do that as a landlord in pretty well any scenario. And the beauty of it is you get somebody who's proud of where they live. They're excited about it. They tell their friends, hey, you guys got to check out my building. It's got some cool stuff.
Yeah.
And I would love how my students, like all their friends would love it. They'd come over. They'd be like, oh, do you have any other places for rent? And most importantly, they never wanted to leave. They stayed and stayed. And of course, in university, you're going to stay 3 years and then you're going to go. So that all worked really fantastically. And I think, again, if you take that approach with your rentals, it can be a little hard if you're doing it all yourself.
Yes.
But if you hire, like if you have the tech people that are willing to go in, you've got the contractors, they're willing to go in and set you up with a model you yourself constantly use in your portfolio, you can just outperform the market.
Right. And if you're going to own these things long term, why would you not do it?
Do more, right? And you'll find that, like when you find somebody who sells a building that they weren't planning on selling, they have all this extra labor of love element.
That is exactly the property with the screens. That's exactly it.
Yeah, he didn't plan on selling.
Never intention of selling. Yeah. And then you look at it and you go, but even on a resale value, he's still going to win.
It's just not as typical in the market. Correct. You know, it takes the buyer has to understand the value add, which is why most wouldn't sell that with that. But if it gets you the higher rent,
it gets you higher value. And again, what do people leave when they walk out and they leave and they start talking about the building? It's shocking. Like even me, here we are, right? Screens. It's so basic. The screens are everywhere, but yet somehow that's the theme.
For the student rentals, it was ensuite bathrooms in every bedroom. That gets people talking. They love that.
Right. It's just these wins, right?
Yeah. So, take your wins. Yeah. Give the tenant something to be excited about. Why not? You're going to get better tenants. So all these people complaining about professional tenants and all that crap, you can weed out a lot of that by just renting in good areas and giving an exceptional product.
Yeah. What a theory.
What a thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. And most won't do it because they just won't spend the extra money. Hey, well, we did laminate counters. We did, did the basic. So you're the one that throws in a TV. You're the one that, gives them an accent wall.
Right.
Just something.
It goes a long way.
It does.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts? So we've really talked, to recap, we've talked about adding value outside of just adding units, things you can do, AI being a big part of it, other items that seem to add value, and then how you translate that into additional dollars on the actual value of the building. So if it's a 5 cap, you're taking whatever your operating income is. If you're an extra 10 grand a year, dividing that by your 0.05, that's where you get that extra 200 grand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Worth it. No, my thoughts are look through your buildings, whether you have them or you're looking to acquire them, and, look at how those efficiencies will.
Well, the same thing goes with energy savings. If you can find a way to save, $1,000 a year by something you do, there's a quantifiable increase in value.
Difference. Yeah.
Within a certain parameter, right? Because if you go too out, if your operating expenses are at like 20%, nobody's going to really believe you. They're going to start to say, hang on, I'm going to adjust that.
Something's off. Yeah.
And then there's only so much that the market will pay per door, right? So there are some caveats to that. But as an owner, for sure, and in the eyes of a buyer, there still is an impact to these efficiencies.
Yeah. Like in the townhomes that I own in Walkerton, everything's metered, water, hydro. And in fact, there's no there's no common area. There's a courtyard in the middle and there's no lights to it. So when you look at the actual expenses to it, there's none. So we've actually had
so your expense ratio is too low.
It's obscene. And we had to walk with the lenders to say, here's exactly how we got
typical
there. And then they get on board. But, that is a key indicator where they're going, something's off. But our justification is we actually worked to getting this.
Yeah. It's a good thing to be aware of. Like, know where your building is. Like, what would you say is a normal expense ratio? Around 30%?
30, yeah.
30 on a multifamily. So if you know that you're at 35, all the efficiencies you can come up with to save expenses, like that's going to be recognized. It's going to be accepted. To like when you get down to like 27%, maybe people start asking questions.
Yeah, you start to get a little. And again, it all like, is it a newer building? Do you have high-paying tenants at market rent? Yeah. But we'll see buildings and they'll be 50%. You go, wow, what an opportunity.
Expense ratio. Yes,
we saw one that was 70%.
Yeah, so there's something up, right?
Yeah,
And it might be a relatively unstabilized building at that point. Maybe
always,
like a few more years, everything stabilizes, and now
it all then drops down to 30. and you're winning.
So it's cool. You guys have these metrics. Plus, there's like industry standard metrics that these appraisers rely on, banks rely on. So they know if you dig into the weeds, well, we typically allocate this percentage for management and this percentage for maintenance. So you can just say, oh, well, that's cool. Like we don't have electric, water, or gas at all.
Okay,
we'll just lop those out. Okay, it makes sense now.
Remove.
Cool. All right, guys. So if you made it this far, show the channel some love, and we're on audio podcast now, so you can find us on Spotify. So for all those people who wanted to just be able to tune in while they drive, you can now do that. And we're excited about that. And we'll be on iTunes very soon. I think we're still getting that one set up, but Spotify is active now.
Appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, David.